way, still it ever me each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe truth is larger than any one book or way. Religion and science go hand in hand. Integrity requires freedom of conscience. Diversity is something to celebrate. In the struggle for justice, we come alive. Our highest aspiration and calling is love. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love. Whoever you are, whatever path you are on, you are welcome here. Please be seated. You know, every Sunday we light this chalice as a symbol of what our faith stands for. Personal growth, soul growth, growth in the life of our community, and social growth too, growth in more justice and peace in our world. This morning we are especially mindful of the trans folk among us and the trans folk that we are. You may have heard that Ohio's Governor Mike DeWine recently issued an executive order that will ban the vast majority of trans health care here in this state. It will be one of the most complete bans in our entire United States, second only to Florida. This has the potential to destroy so many families and communities and lives. And then there was a second ban against hormone replacement treatment for minors, which also prevents trans girls from playing school sports. It's just so sad. Just like the rest of us, trans girls are trying to be themselves and just find a place in a world that wants to demonize them, and where sports are concerned, sees them as trying to gain an unfair advantage, and that unfair advantage concern is just not reality. You got to look into it. What's real is the unfair suspicion and hatred towards these trans girls. So we're lighting our chalice this morning for healing. We're lighting our chalice this morning for reason to overwhelm prejudice. We light this chalice so that all people may be authentically who they are without fear of hatred and bias against them. Can I hear an amen to that? Thank you. Thank you. Well, once again, welcome to everyone here to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. Best place to be, even on a cold morning like this one. Glad you are here. There is so much going on in our church community, ways in which you can make friendships, deepen your friendships, learn things that are good for body, mind, soul. Check out your order of service. I want to be sure to point out something on your insert, a fundraiser, Drag Queen Bingo. How many of you went to this? We did it once before. How many of you went? Did you have a good time? If you've not checked this out, you got to check this out. Drag Queen Bingo coming up here let's see, Friday, January 26th. I also want to be sure people note that, we want to make the order of service as user-friendly and as useful to you as possible. And one of the ways we're doing this is we always include a section called Deeper Dive. Have y'all noticed that? For every sermon, there is a Deeper Dive section and it comes from me, and I suggest resources that you can check out that can help you go deeper into some of the topics that come up in the context of the sermon. How many of you are familiar with the Japanese concept of ikigai? Well, you should check it out. It's cool. And it echoes some of the stuff I'll be talking about today in the sermon. So just to be sure to point that out so folks know about that. Now let me ask, if you are here for the first or second time and you do not mind people knowing, raise your arm so we can greet you. Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this morning. Thank you so much for coming. Now, we're about to greet each other, and I want to also offer a special thank you to the introverts among us, for whom this can sometimes be a challenge. Let's greet each other right now. At the sound of the bowl, we will move on to the next segment. Let's greet each other right now. We come to this good morning, remembering the journey of freedom. The land we are on was once another's. We mourn the legacies of oppression. Healing is our way forward. Joy is the birthright of all. Today's offering comes from longtime and beloved West Shore member, or call to the offering rather, comes from longtime and beloved West Shore member Ann Osborne.
GA junkie for many, many years.
Where's the sound?
A lot of you know that General Assembly is the annual gathering of UUs from across the country. And I started going in 2003 when I had only been a church member for about a year. And it's really a wonderful experience. It was very exciting because there were wonderful workshops, there were great speakers, and I really learned a lot at General Assembly. And singing hymns with a whole bunch of UUs is great, and just the camaraderie. And there's always a bunch of people from West Shore that go. So this year will be a little bit different because it's totally virtual. And one of the reasons for having it totally virtual is to save money for the participants, to save money for the association. to save the environment. And so this morning we're collecting money for the GA Scholarship Fund, which will be used to give financial assistance to Western members who ask for it, because we don't want people to feel excluded from going to General Assembly because of financial reasons. They feel they can't afford it. We want to help remove that barrier. The outreach offering for scholarships for GA will now be given and gratefully received.
So I should have followed Venus's lead and retired permanently from tennis. I did not, so that's what this is. Broken arm. As a child of the 50s, I was born to what my English father would describe as working class parents. He was a machinist and my mother was a secretary. And yes, that was what her job title was at the time. I was not exposed to a great variety of activities like most of today's children. My life consisted not of stimulation, but of imagination, which is not a bad thing. My sister and I played endlessly outdoors when the weather was good, and when it wasn't, I either had my head in a book or in my mother's scrap sewing material box. That box was filled with treasures. At the time, she and my father were into ballroom dancing, and my mother sewed her own gowns for the dances that they went to. There were what seemed like endless pieces of satins and brocades. And then there was also a lot of cotton and linen and things from the office dresses that she sewed for herself to wear to work. And there was even a scrap of real fur. I have no idea where this came from, whether it was roadkill or what, but any scrap in that box became inspiration for a hand-sewn garment for guess who? My Barbie doll. You don't need much fabric to make clothing for a Barbie, and the store-bought clothes that they had at that time, and probably still today, were very expensive. My Barbie had the best wardrobe of any Barbie you might come in contact with. She even had a fur coat, made from that little scrap of fur that miraculously appeared in the box. I never played a lot with my Barbie, but I spent hours sewing for her, a process that developed my sense of creativity and, I guess, style. Eventually, I transitioned into sewing clothes for myself. I took as many home economics courses as I could. Yes, it was home economics at that time. And I learned to cook and sew well enough to make a tailored suit. By the time I graduated from high school, I wanted to be a home economics teacher. And so I came to the first fork in my many, many roads. By that time, I had taken an after-school job in a dental office, and I'd learned kind of the basics of being a dental assistant. I also had a serious boyfriend. So when my mother told me that my father would never agree to me going to college because girls just get married and have children, reasoning which made no sense at all because out of necessity she had worked for most of her married life. But I gave up the teaching home economics idea and settled for dental assisting at a technical school, and shortly after that, marriage at the age of 19. So, how did I end up standing here? And in fact, doing pulpit supply for a number of small churches around Buffalo, where I moved here from. After that very early fork in the road, my life could have been relatively narrow. I was good at my job, and I enjoyed the people side of it. And I still sewed my own clothes, shirts for my husband, little girls' outfits for my daughters. I enjoyed the cooking and homemaking side of being married and having children. But I was restless. I tried out different jobs. I actually modeled. I took a course in how to do voiceovers for radio and how to write descriptions of clothing so that I could moderate fashion shows. At age 26, when my first daughter started kindergarten, I started college. I was working on a journalism degree, not a teaching degree. How my spiritual life unfolded is a story for another time. Reverend Anthony wouldn't let me take up the whole sermon. I can only tell you that even with a father who was an atheist and an agnostic mother, the need to be in touch with my spiritual side was very much alive in that little girl who sat in her room sewing Barbie doll clothes. I consider myself most fortunate that over the 7 decades that I've been around, I've had the opportunities to explore many, many sides of myself. And I plan to continue that exploration going, but maybe without the tennis.
Let us now share from the heart in the beloved ritual of for all that is our lives. Every week when I have the privilege and the honor of meditating on these cards and praying over these cards, I am amazed at the fullness of life that this community brings to this space. You look around you in this space, and let me tell you, everything is happening. All imaginable joys and sorrows, and ones that you couldn't possibly imagine. It is an honor to hurt for you and with you. It is an honor to rejoice with you. All the joys and sorrows and concerns that are expressed and that remain unexpressed in our hearts as you come here today. So this week, as always, I will take these into my prayers and meditations as we celebrate and endure and live for all that is our life. So when I was 8 years old, I saw a movie called Escape to Witch Mountain. People called me Tony back then. They called me Tony back then. You don't have permission now, though. But back then they called me Tony. And it just so happens that one of the movie's main characters was a boy also named Tony, about my age, together with his sister named Tia. Tony and Tia were brother and sister orphans whose memories about their past were blocked. But they suspected that they must have come from somewhere special because they had psychic powers. Yeah, Tony could move things with his mind, and Tia could unlock any door by touch and communicate with animals. Okay? I sat in that theater, wide-eyed, drinking that movie in, their narrow escape from the horrible juvenile detention center, their breathless journey towards a place called Witch Mountain, where they believed they would discover their true identity. And the suspense in all of this was cranked up to 11, because every step they made was shadowed by this evil dude whose name was Evans-Deyermond. He was chasing them. He wanted to enslave them. He wanted to capitalize on all of their paranormal powers. Every close call they had with this guy made me squirm in my narrow theater seat, and I would bump my brother beside me or my father beside me, and I lost a lot of popcorn from my bucket that day, sent flying with every twitch and squirm. And to this day, I continue to be an entertaining movie date, I will say. That night, I had a hard time falling asleep. I had seen something, and I had heard something in that movie that made me want to drop whatever it was I was doing in my life and go find my real family. Oh, yeah. Didn't matter that I was sleeping in a bed in Peace River, Alberta, Canada, and had no idea where my personal witch mountain, was. I just wanted to go. I just wanted to get going. I wanted to leave. I lay there in that bed, and I felt deeply within myself, as deeply as I knew how. I was looking for the same kind of power that Tony in the movie had. So I gathered up my will. I told myself to believe, and if I believed, I would just float up like a feather. Like a miracle. And finally, I would have hard evidence, an indisputable reason for why I had always felt like an orphan in my life, why I had always felt like a stranger in my family and in my world, why I had always felt like there was something more for me out there. I was meant for something else. And I will say that I awoke the next morning sorely disappointed. But I would not let the memory of Tony and Tia go. Their escape to Witch Mountain, the feeling that they were my true family and not the people I just happened to live with. So this was me at 8 years old. I was already busy with the important work of discerning my vocation. But I would not have called it that at the time. It's a very grown-up word, right? That much later on I would learn from theologians. Vocation, a word that names the journey of shedding false selves and growing into one's true self and purpose in the world. Now, as little Tony, I call that going to Witch Mountain, okay? And maybe you've got a name for that as well that is just as unique. And that's what we're talking about today. As an old year passes and a new year begins, and with it, new opportunities, new possibilities. Our choir is singing, "New Light, look to the new light." all of these new opportunities for finding our vocation in the world, our true self, true purpose. And I need to say, it is also a path and a process that never ends, because we never stay the same. We change over time, and that's guaranteed, at the very least, by our aging. Poet and Unitarian Universalist May Sarton speaks to this from older age in her poem, where she says, "Now I become myself. It's taken time, many years, many places. I have been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces." May Sarton says this in her poem, and it does take time. Discerning one's authentic self can indeed be a meandering way. Meandering, with jarring moments of being shaken and dissolved. At times we can find ourselves wearing other people's faces because maybe we want to please them, or maybe it is a survival strategy and we just want to survive. But wearing another person's face, trying to live someone else's life, that's going to inevitably fail. Quaker educator and activist Parker Palmer says this: "True self, when violated, will always resist us, sometimes at great cost, holding our lives in check until we honor its truth." We get lost again and again. And the good news is no one has to stay lost. We can get found. We can find ourselves. And the key to this is letting your life speak. Listening to the deep aliveness within us that has a certain nature. And we feel how its yearnings go in some directions, but not in others. It is about listening beyond and beneath the big voice of one's moralistic superego that insists you must do this, you must be like this in order to be a good person. You have to learn to listen beyond that big voice to the still small voice where one's integrity really resides. Now, this language of letting your life speak, it comes from a book with roughly the same title by Parker Palmer. It is a great read. The one piece of advice he gives that I particularly want to focus on in this morning with you is this. He says, "When we lose track of true self, how can we pick up the trail? One way is to seek clues in stories from our younger years, years when we lived closer to our birthright gifts." Okay? I encourage you to do that as you continue your personal journey of becoming authentically yourself, to seek clues from your younger years, just like we heard Donna do a moment ago. And that's what I'm going to be getting right back to right now, to go back to that time when I used to be called Tony, okay, to continue demonstrating Parker Palmer's spiritual guidance to us. 3 years after seeing Escape to Witch Mountain, 3 years after that movie cut through all the trivia of my regular world, and I heard in it the call to my true home, and I just wanted to drop everything and go there. 3 years later, my fascination would settle on something else, on a paperback book I carried with me practically everywhere. It was entitled 50 Great Short Stories, edited by Milton Crane, a name I thought hilarious, Milton Crane. Whatever, okay. So the book included such short story gems as Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, okay, Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of the Red Death, Thomas Wolfe's Only the Dead Know Brooklyn, Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find, Ernest Hemingway's The 3-Day Blow. I'm 11 years old now, okay? It didn't really matter how much I did or did not read, how much I did or did not understand. It was just about the words. I love them. I love them. Word after word after word, creating scenes in your mind, creating new life. I carried that book of 50 great short stories everywhere I went as a reminder of that power. I hung out a lot at my dad's medical office all through the week, but on Saturdays, when he would be in his cubicle in the back, right, doing his charts, I'd be out in the front in the receptionist area where the electronic typewriter was. Oh, I turned that thing on, and the sound it growled out, that's it. The sound, oh man, I could feel that power surging through it. It was just like this chained animal. I'd roll in a new sheet of paper. I'd start typing. Each letter would bang down hard on the page. Bang, bang. Leave its mark. Letters building words, words building sentences. My book, 50 Great Short Stories, would be right beside me. And it comforted me, made me feel like perhaps the power of Jackson and Poe and Woolf and O'Connor and Hemingway with all their words could be my power too. I already knew that I didn't have the power of telekinesis like Tony, the character in the movie, did. That had already, unfortunately, been proven. But I still felt like an orphan. I still felt like there was a witch mountain out there for me to find, for me to travel to, where I would find my true self. And I still needed to get there. I needed to find a way. And maybe writing was how. Yet, here's what would happen as I'd sit there at that IBM Selectric typewriter while it was growling, barely restrained. What would happen when I would sit there in front of it? I would go blank. I'd have no earthly idea what to say. The feelings that roiled within me, I didn't have a way to translate them to words. It was always this way. And I just want to say right now, isn't it amazing how so early on in life we can already see in cameo the central yearnings and challenges of our truth? We can also see how the universe just keeps on dropping clues here and there about what our way forward can be. And for me, it was so many things. You've heard the movie, the book, and it was also people like my Church of Christ pastor in high school. This is not United Church of Christ. This is Church of Christ, super fundamental, okay? My pastor in high school. He took me under his wing. We'd go on home visitations together. He would invite me. And we'd be driving in his car, and he had a hairdo that was huge and lacquered up with Aquanet, so much so that it was stereotypical televangelist hair. Hair that had its own personality, hair that had its own gravity, okay? Oh yeah. We'd be driving down the road. Obviously, he's behind the wheel, I'm the passenger, and his right hand would be on that wheel. And every time someone passed by, obviously on the opposite side of the road, he'd give them a small wave with that hand. Ooh, I thought that was slick. Oh, woo! I thought that was slick. And the sunlight glitting off of that hair, oh my God. I just wanted to be like that man. Not the hair part. The friendly and caring part. Do you see the picture? Yeah, that's Pastor Dan. Pastor Dan Manuel. A lot more stories about him, but not for now. These are all clues from the margins, whispers of which mountain, things that come into your life and they make you want to drop whatever it is you happen to be doing and to do something else, even if you don't know what that something else is yet. You just feel restless. You just feel like you are meant for something more. When I was 20 years old, I had 2 dreams. And here's the first. The first is that I am one of 6 black birds, and we are in a circle teaching people, and the people encircle us. The other dream goes like this. My elephant, I guess I have an elephant, is trapped in a tightly fitting glass bottle, but I release him, and I discover that he is just like soap. So I soap myself up with my elephant, and it utterly transforms me. And I am especially thrilled to see that that has made me capable of figure skating like all of the Olympians of my dreams. Those were the 2 dreams from that time. They were just powerful for me. I had them when I was still in college, on the way to graduate school. The dreams teased me with a sense that I was meant for something that perhaps could help others, and it would also be healing for myself. But what? What was I holding on to that I needed to drop? And what new thing should I take up? I didn't have an earthly clue then. And isn't that the way of it? The way of our lives? Later, much later, we can look back and we can understand. Marilyn Robinson, in her wonderful book entitled Gilead, has her main character, an old preacher, say it like this. He says, "Now that I look back, it seems to me that in all that deep darkness, a miracle was preparing. So I am right to remember it as a blessed time, and myself as waiting in confidence, even if I had no clue what I was waiting for." If you are feeling lost right now, how could things be different if you reframed your situation as a deep darkness in which a miracle was being prepared? What difference could that mean for you? In deep darkness, a miracle was preparing. Have I ever told you about the first time I stepped into a Unitarian Universalist congregation? Oh, deep darkness. I mean, here's what I mean. I completely and utterly hated it. This is a Unitarian Universalist church, right? That's supposed to be funny, kind of a irony piece there. Just want to be sure y'all are following. Oh, I hated it. And here's why I hated it, because the preaching was so bad. Oh, my former wife and I, with our 2-year-old in tow, okay, we went to the small Unitarian fellowship in our town, and while the people were super friendly, the worship sucked. That's a technical theological term, in case you were wondering. Yeah. The preacher literally took 30 minutes to share his laundry list of what he did over the summer, including doing laundry. I am not kidding you. I was outraged. I wanted to stand up and shout, "Fraud!" Oh, it was like I was 8 years old again. And I was in the darkened movie theater, and I was watching Escape to Witch Mountain, except the evil Lucas Duranian had been replaced by a terrible dullard of a preacher. I couldn't stop squirming in my seat, which embarrassed my poor wife, ex-wife, horribly. Good thing no popcorn was involved. Later, when I was in seminary, studying how to be a preacher in my own right, I came across these words from Ralph Waldo Emerson's Divinity School address, famous, from 1838. And he delivered that to that year's graduating class of ministers, of Unitarian ministers. So he says, I once heard a preacher who sorely tempted me to say I would go to church no more. A snowstorm was falling around us. The snowstorm was real. The preacher merely a ghost. And the eye felt the sad contrast in looking at him and then looking out through the window beyond him, behind him, where beautiful snow was falling. The sad contrast. He had lived in vain. He had not one word intimating that he had laughed or wept, was married or in love, had been commended or cheated or chagrined. If he had ever lived and acted, we were none the wiser for it. The capital secret of his profession, says Emerson, namely, to convert life into truth, he had not learned. And that's what Emerson said. He was as cranky in his complaint from 1838 as I was in mine from 1994. Listening to that preacher just wasted my time. You know, sometimes the call to our true self happens not as an experience of delight, but as an experience of disappointment. Okay? Isn't that surprising? I mean, can you relate? You heard your call to greater authenticity because you encountered something or someone that deeply disappointed you. And somehow you must have known about better possibilities that you somehow might be the source of. In deep darkness, a miracle was preparing. Indeed. Now think again about what it was like for me at 11 years of age, how I would be sitting in front of that growling IBM Selectric typewriter wanting to get started on my own short story, but I would have nothing to say. How I would feel that power just slipping through my fingers, just slipping away. Well, after college and graduate school, and then 8 years of teaching college philosophy, there was no more problem. One of my first sermons in seminary was 6,000 words long. Now keep in mind that 2,000 words is 20 minutes. So it was one whole hour of me holding forth. The sermon title was The Spirituality of Imperfection. I guess I had a lot to say about that topic, including modeling it through an hour-long sermon. Woo! But you know, at least finally I could feel the power flowing through me. I couldn't levitate like Tony from the movie. And it did not look like writing short stories was in the cards for me. But preaching was. I had found my witch mountain. Yeah, the home that my 8-year-old self yearned for was finally found. And you know what? The road, it ever runs on. The road, it ever runs on. True self is like the horizon. It gives us a definite direction, but it also ever recedes. You and I are like moving targets as life happens and things change. I am on to my next witch mountain, and then the next, and I'll bet you are too. It is about spiritual beings having a human experience. What home is, what authenticity, what integrity mean, it's always in process, never fully achieved. True for me, true for you. I can only hope that in the midst of your hectic days in this new year of 2024, something's going to come to you, help you glimpse the moving target of your true self. Perhaps it will be an inspiration. Perhaps it will be a disappointment. Sometimes the clue to my true self has come as a moment of jealousy. Maybe that'll happen for you also. Perhaps it may even be a story about your life that you remember when you were 4 or 6 or 10. And right there are clues about your nature, your unique inclinations, your yearnings, the desires of your soul, your particular version of which mountain. Whatever it is, may you reach for that clue. Reach for the glimpse of your true self. See where it takes you. We just get lost again and again. The good news is that no one has to stay lost. May 2024 be a full year of sweet discoveries for you and for us all. You and I, listening to our lives on the continuing path towards which mountain? We are getting found. We are going home. Let's say our extinguishing the chalice words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we meet again. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sprout of visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, the morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. So we know that tomorrow, America honors the great man, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And I want to share a quick story, about him. 6 months before he was assassinated, Dr. King spoke to a group of students at Barrett Junior High School in Philadelphia on October 26, 1967, year I was born. Part of what he said to those folks was this: "And when you discover what you will be in your life, set out to do it as if God Almighty called you at this particular moment in history to do. Don't just set out to do a good job. set out to do such a good job that the living, the dead, or the unborn couldn't do it any better. Be a bush, he said, if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, be a trail. If you can't be a sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or fail. Be the best of whatever you are. I just want to thank Dr. King for his leadership, for his pastoring. All these years later after his death, we honor him, we honor his spirit, we honor his example of someone who found his witch mountain. And may we do it as well. Go in peace.